But I find a lot of times with these people, when you say like, hey, I tried everything, I tried this diet, I've tried these supplements, I think a lot of times what's happening is they're spraying and praying. They're just like trying a bunch of things, but none of it is personalized to them. So that's where the labs come in. And it also, a lot of times we'll take an experienced practitioner who can like go through your case and go, okay, these are the things that are important that you're missing. Don't worry about all this other stuff. I think with most people, what they really need is to learn what not to do because they're doing all these different things. You're like, all right, this is just not necessary. Let's go back to the basics.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only, and it's not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome back to Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer, and today I'm excited to introduce John Mitchell. John's a functional medicine physician assistant turned health consultant. John's a graduate of the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine and has worked in urgent care and addiction medicine before switching to functional medicine. He's also worked in pharmaceutical research as an EMT and an ER tech. John and I had a great chance to chat about chronic disease, fatigue, what objective measurements to prioritize for longevity, and many other topics. Please enjoy my conversation with John Mitchell. Welcome back to Personalized. I'm here with John Mitchell, physician assistant. Nice to meet you, John.
Very nice to meet you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing great.
It's so great to have you on the show. I love speaking with people from your profession. I love getting your insight, learning about why you've decided to take on this task of participating in functional medicine, holistic approaches to care, personalized care. Tell me about your story. How did you get from a conventional approach to care to this new way, this functional way? Give me the details on the journey.
Yeah. So before I went to my medical program, I was shadowing with a PA, and he was into triathlons. And at the time, I was like, just came out of undergrad. I was not really working out. I was not watching my diet very well. It's like pretty much just in a library sitting for 6 to 8 hours a day. So I was like, all right, you know what? I need to start dialing in this aspect of my life. Started getting triathlons, started getting into nutrition and going down that rabbit hole. And by the time I'd gotten to school, I was like, okay, I understand now roughly kind of like what to do as far as like taking care of your body and what we need. And like none of that was covered in my medical education. It was the name it, blame it, tame it game, right? Which we all have heard. Like you walk into your doctor and they want to name your problem in the form of diagnosis. They blame it for why you feel so bad, and then they want to tame it with a prescription. And that was pretty much it. It was just pharmacology. It wasn't even really, to me, it wasn't really medicine. So by the time I graduated, I was ready to just not even practice because I was like, this is not in alignment with how I want to help people. I want to help people live, I call it like a hell yes life. I want to make sure that people like live life to the fullest on their terms. And I didn't have the tools to do that. I wasn't given that in my medical program. And I didn't really see an avenue to be able to do that in that capacity, working within that field. So I was in practice for a few years. And in that time, I discovered functional medicine. I was like, okay, this feels a lot better. And I started going around the US and shadowing different practitioners, taking different coursework, had some mentors along the way, and I was able to really, learn and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to help people resolve their health issues and build robust health, as opposed to the mainstream medical model.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Tell me about some of the roles you had prior. Like what kind of work were you doing as a PA?
Yeah, I started off with addiction treatment. So I was inpatient. It's intense. It was an intense role, but it was a great learning experience. I had an amazing mentor, which is really what I've always looked for, I guess, without ever like cognitively like thinking about it. I was like, okay, I want somebody who's going to invest in me. So as a practitioner, that's so important, especially when you're first starting off. So that was huge. And then I transitioned to urgent care medicine, it's pretty much, I was the sole practitioner whenever I was on. So it was like just me seeing people, 30, 40 people a day. It was a lot. And that's when I was like, all right, I need to figure this out and transition. So after that is when I got my first job in functional medicine and started this whole path.
Cool. Good for you. Tell me about that mentorship relationship in functional medicine. Like, what's that been like for you? What type of work have you done with the mentor that's improved your career, maybe your patient relationships or your treatment protocols? What kind of work have you done?
Everything. That's probably the number one thing I would say if you're just starting off is you either need to work in a practice and get that mentorship, or you got to hire someone. I hired people, but that was instrumental in every aspect, in the business perspective of like, okay, how do we like run a business and get clients in? And then, yeah, when you have a tough case, let's hop on a call and spend an hour and like hash it out and review it, because you can do all the coursework you want. You can go to IFM and all the other like really good trainings, A4M. Those aren't going to get into like all of the nuances of dealing with a patient on the day to day. And there's, as a practitioner, like people are so unique. And this is why we talk about personalized medicine. Like what you think is going to work for one person is like ends up not working for another person who has the same diagnosis. I can have 10
Right.
people with a thyroid issue, and what is going to be needed for them to heal can be very different.
That's a really good example, by the way. Like a big part of my practice is measuring metabolism and helping people eat well for their current metabolic rate, depending on what their body composition goals are. And the thyroid comes up a whole lot. And personalizing the approach to the thyroid can be a big challenge. Do you have any cases or any ideas you want to share about personalized care for metabolic rate, for thyroid health? Like what is that example to you?
My big thing when we talk about personalization is the framework I look at is what are the upstream factors that influence thyroid health? If you go to your standard doctor, it's just like, we're going to test for your thyroid's off, let's put you on Synthroid or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's what are the factors that influence chronic health issues? And for me, there's usually 6 big categories that I look at. So number one is nutritional deficiencies and excesses. So I like to do a NutriVal test, and let's see what your nutrition status looks like. What are your minerals? What's your, iodine's a tough one to test, but like what's your zinc? What's your selenium? What are your B vitamins? So we'll assess for those. Then we look at stressors, and stressors could be physical, could be psychological, could be past trauma. That's a huge one. We talk about autoimmune issues that I don't think is discussed enough. Toxins, heavy metals, environmental toxins like pesticides, things like that. Microbes, so we start looking at like stealth infections, dysbiosis, and then like environmental and lifestyle factors. And I think this is slept on even with a lot of other, pretty holistic practitioners, but like really dialing in like, what is your circadian biology like and your light exposure? What is like the water you're drinking and the mineral status? How are you breathing? Are you a mouth breather, either during the day or at nighttime? I can't tell you how many people that I work with who have dysfunctional breathing at night. They wake up with a dry mouth. They're not breathing through their nose, and they don't realize how much that's affecting them throughout the day, and also just physiologically in general. Like poor sleep, not breathing properly is going to affect you in pretty much every aspect of your body.
For sure. I love that answer. Like for anyone who's listening who's dealing with a thyroid issue, typically hypothyroidism, that's like a masterclass right there. Really fast, John. I love that. It's the best. Like I've had two cases that are like top of mind where the TSH has been as low as it could be without being hyperthyroid, medication induced, like the right dose of medication. And we've measured metabolism and it's been low. Like their actual amount of calorie burn is low, and it's expressed as feeling low energy in both of these cases.
How do you like to test for it?
Testing metabolism?
Yeah.
You're asking? So we use the PNOE metabolic analysis device. So we measure calorie burn through carbon dioxide exhaled.
Nice.
Yeah, which is a sensor device. So it's like the best thing to do in hypothyroidism for me is like to actually see how much energy is being consumed. And these are cases where it's been low. And like you have this framework that you just so easily rolled off. I love it. I love it. The things that stand out to me are nutrient deficiencies, right? Infections, the autoimmune triggers, for example. The main cause of hypothyroidism in North America is Hashimoto's disease.
Yep.
And yet we simply are just, kind of covering up the symptoms by trying to prescribe as much Synthroid without making someone, or as much thyroid medication without making them hyper. It's just wild to me.
It's crazy, especially with the thyroid too, because I don't understand this, but where doctors are very hesitant to even test for autoimmune antibodies. Like it would be good to know if your body's actively damaging your thyroid, because when people ask like, well, can I recover function? I'm like, yeah, to a certain extent, depends on the extent of damage. But if you're
Mhm.
not measuring that, if you're not looking at those antibodies, like you have no idea where you're at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd love to have a conversation with a group of people who have been measuring those antibodies a lot, like maybe you and I, and people who don't measure them at all, who are bound by certain restrictions. Like here, the government pays for our testing, and it's not included as something that can be paid for. And I think I'm not I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think it's because it doesn't change the treatment. The treatment is
Right.
still this one medication.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I also think that there's a concern, and patient advocacy is a real big thing that we try to do here. But don't you think that patients are getting really smart about things and they're trying to build these holistic approaches themselves without kind of this guidance, and that the conventional system sometimes it gets a little complicated, right? Like when protocols are coming in, but we don't have the evidence to suggest it's the absolute best thing to do in each scenario. More data sometimes complicates things from a conventional standpoint. I love it because I feel like there are things that can be done that have evidence, but gosh, when you have a short visit, from seeing 40 people a day, like what can you do in that amount of time? Back in that day, were you testing antibodies at all? Probably not. Hey.
Oh no, well, I mean, in urgent care is really just very, very quick, short
Oh, I
visits. Well,
suppose, yeah.
yeah, as quick as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was a challenge because there would be people who come in and you could tell like, okay, your issue, you're coming in because you have a headache, but it's high blood pressure, and I really want to get into about like, all right, here are all the things that we need to work on, but yeah, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
the time for that. You're just like, hey, here's this printout on high blood pressure. Go follow up with your doctor.
Totally, totally. You brought up a couple really cool things there. One was environmental toxins, for example. I know you've got some experience in infectious disease and mold toxicity and that type of thing. It's totally relevant in autoimmune conditions like hypothyroidism. Can you speak to those a little bit? Like, we only do a little bit of environmental toxicity assessments here. Have you had experience in these realms, and what's that been like for you?
Yeah. So with most of my clients, by default, we are going to assess for these things,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if you have a like an obvious issue. So you can go in and do more expensive, like for mold testing, for instance, do like a ARME test or something. But generally, what I like my clients to do is just go through like their house and do a walkthrough. Like look at the crawl space, look at the areas where there's a lot of moisture, look behind the sink, look in your HVAC system, and just like do a quick visual inspection. Is there anything that may be off? Go check like the intake filter, which people almost never change for your system. Like little things like that. I'd rather us be proactive
Mm-hmm.
and correct them. And that way you often save a lot of money on the tail end. So like another good example is water. If you could test your water for all these contaminants, I'd rather you just get a good quality, like I use an RO with a remineralizer system. I'd rather you just do
Mm-hmm.
that, and then we don't have to test. And then we know
Fair.
it's fine. So I like to do a lot of things and be proactive. Because otherwise, if I'm not getting results, then I often have to backtrack and be like, okay, well, let's go look at these things. I'd rather just knock them out to start.
Oh, I love that. Like, I have been totally against all of that for years and years and years, thinking that it's a waste of money to spend cash on labs that we don't know if we're going to find anything, testing the
Yes.
house, doing all this stuff. But now I've got people who are close to me who have surprise conditions, surprise diseases that I think we could have caught if we were doing more routine screening using functional assessments. And although they're expensive, like gosh, we could have found things that we now are dealing with, and maybe it's too far gone.
And sometimes, especially when you're working with people, is I like leverage. So some people are not going to change unless they see the
Yeah,
data. People are
completely.
not going to remove foods if they don't see that unless they see a food sensitivity test that they're reacting. Yeah, right.
Totally. Completely.
You're, so this is one reason why I like testing. Like sometimes, yes, like maybe it's not absolutely necessary, but if it helps somebody and if it helps someone change, if it gives them the impetus where they can see, like, yes, legitimately there's an issue, I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. I find that as a practitioner, if that's going to help me, good.
Oh, I think that's really cool. Like we don't do concierge. We don't have a concierge practice here, but if we did, because I know you practice in sort of in this way, what would it be like for you if you sort of had enough, the person who is doing preventative care, and you wanted to take them through a journey towards complete organ optimization, maximize longevity using objective data, and you could choose, say, one lab per year and they had no conditions. Maybe you could choose a patient avatar. You could choose a 60-year-old male, or you could choose a 60-year-old female. What tests would you do? Say, like, if you could do one or two per year, what would be the order of testing you would do?
It's a great question. I mean, I always go back to the NutriVal just because I like the comprehensiveness of the
Mm-hmm.
nutritional testing, because I do find that's upstream of a lot of health issues.
And everyone understands it too,
Yeah.
right? It's easy to understand. You're getting something that's actionable right away. Most of us have deficiencies. The food is deficient. Our digestion sucks. You're going to have something that you can work on that's going to benefit the other systems. And maybe next year when you do the next one, you won't find anything because you corrected a nutrient deficiency.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
That's totally fair. What do you think? What direction would you go next?
Actually, I would go some simple things too, some at home stuff. Like I like to test like a VO2 max, a body composition, and you can do that. Like, you can go to a center and get your VO2 max up. I'm like, you could do a Cooper test, and it's like 93% is accurate. You just go run on a track for 12 minutes, and that's one of the highest leverage things we can work on, anyways, is your cardiovascular endurance. So, yeah, that's a great one, and also because people can see it, and then I'll send them a chart of like, hey, this is where you fit within like these quintiles, and this is what it means for your longevity. Like, let's do something about it.
Oh, great. Perfect answer. Perfect. And talking to someone who runs a VO2 max center.
Okay.
Absolute perfect answer. VO2 max is the most important thing. Come on, that's the best, especially if you're going in with a lean body type with lots of muscle mass. That's the absolute best. And like you said, there's lots of tools that you can use to test for low cost, no cost, to track your body composition, for example, and your VO2 max. That's so great. What would be the order of things next if you had to choose? Would you then be, and I'm thinking more about your interest and maybe the people that you work with the most, would you then be interested in hormones, environmental pollutants, food sensitivities? What direction you like to go?
But yeah, food sensitivities I generally hold off unless someone has like gut issues for sure. We'll do food sensitivities, but it's not something I'll do like by default with most people. Same thing with gut. If you have gut issues for sure we will, but not always. Probably be like the hormones and cardiometabolic markers. That would be, again, just to get a baseline. Like where is your risk? Again, it comes down to people getting leverage and people knowing, okay, this is where we actually have to focus, because if we're talking about longevity and people dying, then okay, let's look at the things that are most likely to kill you, like cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's and things like that. So I would like to get a good detailed testing, like what's your ApoB and Lp(a), like more advanced stuff than just a standard lipid panel. That'd be extremely useful. Again, just to get a baseline. Now, what we do with that information, then we have more work to do, but it's a good start.
Totally. I love that answer. So like for the clinicians watching, like I think your framework is awesome and is something that I've done it the opposite way in my people who are ridiculously healthy, who just want to be as healthy as possible. We do VO2 max and body composition first, just because that's my thing.
That's great.
And then present the opportunity to test nutrients. But I think that's really, really, really cool. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the person who's not getting well. You feel like you're doing everything right. Maybe you've had a series of tests, for example, but the person is still unwell. Their energy is really, really low. They feel terrible. What are the things that we should be thinking about? This type of chronic fatigue, chronic illness, unwell, no diagnosis is becoming incredibly prevalent in my area of the world. It's unbelievably prevalent. I'm interested to know about your thinking in this context.
Pretty much when anyone comes to me, it's always the same thought process. It's okay, what are the upstream factors that are creating these issues, and let's just check these things off. But I find a lot of times with these people, when you say like, hey, I tried everything, I'm tried this diet, I've tried these supplements, I think a lot of times what's happening is they're spraying and praying. They're just like trying a bunch of things, but none of it is personalized to them. So that's where the labs come in. And it also, a lot of times we'll take an experienced practitioner who can like go through your case and go, okay, these are the things that are important that you're missing. Don't worry about all this other stuff. I think with most people, what they really need is to learn what not to do because
Right.
they're doing all these different things. You're like, all right, this is it's just not necessary. Let's go back to the basics. Like, are you getting outside in the sun daily? Are you going for a
Mm-hmm.
walk? Like, that stuff is more important than all of the biohacking, infrared light, and peptides and things like that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, you make a good point, but that makes me think about two people I'm working with right now who um have had low vitamin D levels that have then been corrected with a evidence-based protocol, and then after the washout period found levels low again. And you
Mm,
think to just regular old sun exposure, right? Like you think to just like the things that we kind of want to be doing anyways, regardless of what objective assessments say. We want to be getting out in nature as much as possible. And going back to those basics can be really powerful. What's your experience been like with mold toxicity and mold disease? Do you have much experience in that realm too?
yeah, yeah, I see. I mean, I wouldn't say a good bit, but I definitely see it. So, I mean, the big thing with mold is you develop CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and it's a
Mm,
whole. I mean, you get a whole list of weird symptoms that don't seem interconnected. The biggest challenge with mold, one is properly identifying it, but two, then what do you do with that? And I find that's where it's very difficult to find remediation companies that understand what you need to do because really what it comes down to is you need to remove it. If it's not
hmm
superficial, if it's in the walls, if it's if it's just a dead end in the drywall, you have to remove all of it. You can't chemically treat it. Like the spores are going to survive. They even if they're killed, they can still trigger an immune response in people who are sensitive to those things. So if you're renting, then what are you going to do? You talk to your landlord, they're not going to spend the money to actually remediate it properly. So you end up having to move. And then if you're in a house, it's expensive to be able to remediate it.
hmm
And then that's like the first step. You have to get out of the environment. And I think that's one of the challenging ones because people will try and stay in a sick environment. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. You have to change.
hmm
So that's
Yeah.
number one. And then from there, there's a whole process of like, okay, now we have to start identifying all the issues within your body that's allowing this to for your body to react. You start looking at like the brain, you start looking at the gut, food sensitivities, hormones, like all these things
Mm.
get affected. So it's a long process to be able to deal with it holistically.
Oh, so would you say like suboptimal function on these other within these other systems would leave a person susceptible, maybe genetic too, but
Yeah.
like because I'm thinking about my region specifically. Like when we started living in our the place where we are currently, the humidity in the basement was 99%. Like it
Well,
was,
yeah.
it's unbelievable. I got a monitor in the first like couple of weeks, and we've been able to keep it right at 45% with like a really good dehumidifier. I feel like there's 2 million people here. Not everyone is doing that. And people are incredibly depressed and chronically fatigued in our city. And we blame it on vitamin D because we're northern, right? And so I worry about mold for everyone around here. And I know how complicated it can be. And I don't consider myself an expert. But you're saying like just, considering a holistic approach, managing nutrients, managing hormones, making sure the body is optimized, and then going for complete removal is kind of like your key strategy.
Yeah. I mean you're totally right with the humidity too. Like that's a big thing when I talk about air is all right, what's your humidity in the house?
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta keep it around like that 50% mark.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, a lot of people, if you're in a place like where you're talking where there's high humidity, you often have to use like a whole house
You
dehumidifier or something
do.
that's going to do it. Because otherwise, well, you're gonna get a standalone unit and you have to constantly like change it out and dump
Mm-hmm.
it. It's a pain. So that's it's slept on. It's slept on for sure. However, I wouldn't say, especially in like the more holistic fields, I think there's a trend to overdiagnose as well. So that's where screening is really important. Like making sure you go through, like I have a good symptom questionnaire, and then we do like a visual contrast screen. It's like based on the Shoemaker protocol, and I find that's really good. It's a good baseline just to get an understanding. Like, all right, do I think you're dealing with this or not? And if so, then we can move forward. But if you don't check off these boxes, like this is not going to be our highest leverage thing. So making
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're not chasing things that really aren't there is important as well.
Yeah, definitely. Good mention on the clinical tool there. Can you give us the name again?
So there's the Shoemaker protocol, like their screen. The first one is like a visual contrast test. So there's like
Okay.
on their website, they have like a visual contrast and it's like 5, $10 or something. So you have a
Hmm.
patient do that. And then the other thing is just a symptom. There's clusters of different symptoms. And if they check off like 9 of these, like, I think it's 14 or 15 clusters, you're like, okay, there's a of extremely high likelihood. It's like 98% that you're dealing with this chronic inflammatory response syndrome.
Hmm.
Then you have to go down the rabbit hole, figure out, all right, are you being exposed to mold or is it something else? Is it Lyme? But yeah, that's the first thing. If I have an inkling, I'm like, yeah, this person's got like a bunch of odd symptoms. Let's screen and see, and then we move from there.
That's a super helpful reminder. I haven't looked at that protocol in like 5 years. Thank you so much, John. I got a lot of value out of that many, many years ago and had some really great success thinking about how they approach those conditions. So thank you. Do you have like a key patient avatar, like the type of person that you see the most or a condition you see the most?
So I work with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, generally very busy, health conscious though. They're usually like take care of themselves for the most part, but despite all their best like efforts, they still got this thing wrong. A lot,
Yeah.
it's either energies, fatigue and brain fog is up there, and then gut issues would probably be number two, and then like hormones, testosterone be number three. And they're often interrelated. You start seeing people like, yeah, I'm like, I have these gut issues and it affects my mood, it affects my libido. And then everybody wants to lose weight. There's always like that. Like, I have this gut issue and I'd like to lose 15 pounds.
Right.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements, empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
Completely. And my understanding is that you're a prominent user of CGMs, continuous glucose monitors. Can you tell me a bit
Yeah.
about that experience?
I love CGMs. I know like people are like, oh, it's not like super evidence based, for people who are diabetic or pre-diabetic, but even so, I find there's a ton of utility to it. One is the Hawthorne effect, which is people who feel like they are being monitored will act better. And I find that so true with CGMs. When people see their blood sugar spiking after a meal, they think twice about doing that again. So for somebody who's trying to lose weight even, I find that extremely useful. And then too, like people just being able to see again what their blood sugar is like. You can catch things really early before it progresses. Like an A1C is fine, but it's not like super accurate. It's just giving you the baseline. But when you really look at the CGM, that gives you such nuanced information about, how your blood sugar is reacting postprandially, what your average is, what your variability is, and all those things can give you like such detailed information. And it also allows you to personalize the meals that you're eating.
Right.
Okay, how are we going to structure things? So we're going to, we're going to put protein first and fiber. You can figure out what your carb load is and where you want to keep it. So I just thought it gives a ton of actionable information that helps people dial into nutrition outside of even having a diabetes or prediabetes.
I agree with that completely. And one thing that you sort of mentioned there that I really think is valuable is for people who are quite responsive to data, super helpful. It provides them that little win when they do it right.
Yes.
Right. So like say, for example, myself, super type A, I'll do anything to win. I'm on the ball, disciplined, but having that data in front of me amplifies that times 1,000%. And then I get this win. Okay. I did it. I did a good job. I get a little pat on the back. That's a little win. And then you get lunch as a win too. Then dinner's definitely a win. If you had 2 wins already, you're getting a third win. You can't ruin the day without that third win. So I love it for that like immediate feedback. I think it's super helpful. But I think the real, maybe, I don't know if it's a concern or not for a healthy individual, is if they're trying to build muscle mass, you need a bit of an insulin response. You don't want to keep it super flat. So trying to counsel someone to not keep it super flat all day is a bit of a challenge. There's so much nuance there.
It's a fine line, yeah. And I always tell people that I'm like, dude, if I use 140 as a rough cutoff as
Mm.
for like a peak, but I'm like, if you go above it a little bit, especially like every once in a while, it's fine. Like it's not dysfunctional. Yeah, there is some education that has to be done with that because yes, you can go crazy and make a mountain out of a molehill. So
Hmm.
yes, I think there is nuance and but yeah, like you said, having that it's the real time feedback is just so useful. Being able to see like, yes, I slept like, oh, I woke up twice last night and my blood sugar spiked because I was up with my kids. Or like, yeah, when I drank alcohol, I noticed like I actually got a big dip, and that's usually when I got hungry and then I wanted to eat. Like being able to see that in real time, it's extremely useful.
Definitely, those are great examples. I haven't had a good chance to use it with an athlete yet. Have you?
That's a good question. Not a professional athlete. I've
No,
used it with
like
athletes, but
I mean
usually,
amateur. I mean amateur.
yeah,
And
I do. So usually, it's interesting because a lot of them you'll see a spike as they're working out that
yeah.
will actually increase, which I'm like, it's fun. It's totally normal. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's another thing where if you're not counseling them, they can think there's something wrong.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, that's a really great point. I want to do like a good carb load 2 hours before activity. I want to do some liquid carbs 30 minutes before. I want to then have them train hard, and then I want to refeed them sugar right after a heavy lifting episode. I'm interested in seeing that, but I haven't had a chance to do it. Maybe I'll do it on myself sometime soon.
And to see like how that exercise affects like the
Yeah.
blood sugar as well. Like you'll see like, hey, yeah, after a workout, like usually, even though I'm taking in a larger say bolus of carbs, I'm not getting the same response that I would if I haven't worked out.
Definitely. Having that trial, that N of one where you're doing that for yourself after intense exercise and then after no exercise would be really valuable. I know that I can't have my Whole Foods brand muffin anymore because without exercise, it's a no-go
Yep.
with the CGM. That's for sure. Too much sugar in that thing. I got a really cool thing coming up soon where I'm working with an athlete and we're going to use the VO2 max assessment device, but instead of doing a ramp test, we're going to do an hour. So
Oh,
we'll get to see how they go through fat burning into glycogen stores and then back to fat burning. So I've
nice.
never made it back to fat burning with anyone. So we're going to do that next week for the first time. It's been 4 years and I haven't had that opportunity.
That'll be fun.
So pairing that with a CGM is like my dream. Maybe I'll convince them to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. How is it in Canada as far as the accessibility of CGMs?
Up until recently, it was simply a prescription required, and then last week I sent someone with a prescription. And they didn't even ask for it; they just sold it to them. So it
Nice.
was no prescription required
That's where it
for
should
that one.
be. I don't understand why we need it. Like if you can have a finger prick that's over the counter, this really isn't much
Completely.
different.
What's the difference? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Completely. I fully agree with that. Tell me a little bit about the style of practice you have. Are you mostly virtual?
Yeah, I'm 100% virtual.
100% virtual. Okay. What's that been like transitioning from, in-person urgent care to 100% virtual?
I love it. I think it's extremely convenient for the patient as well, which is really huge. I guess the one thing I would say, like everybody, it is important to have like in person, have somebody have your hands on you. So I always say like you want to have a primary care provider who looks at you at least once annually. That is important.
Hmm.
But the convenience of being able to do it virtually, especially because the way I structure most of my programs, I meet with people, usually it's weekly. So to think somebody's going to drive in every week to see you is a lot, but to be able to, hang up a business meeting, hop on a Zoom call, do our call, and then go back to what you need to do, it's extremely convenient. And then it's so nice because, like, as far as last day, you just drop ship everything here. So any
Hmm.
bypass have drop ship. If you need to do a lab core, I can send you a requisition, you go. So so I started in 2019 with this, and I think after COVID, it became a lot more palatable for people. I think before that, it was probably there's some people who loved it and others who didn't, but now I think it's everybody understands the utility of it, and it's
Hmm.
like it's great.
Definitely. Well, that's awesome. I know some people who have done that, and they're so grateful to be able to provide the kind of care they want to provide virtually. I think it's really great. It doesn't sound like you're missing out on much, right? Like, having a physical exam only when needed. That seems to be the only drawback. Can you think of anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it is nice. There are certain things that you can't pick up, I think, virtually. If you're talking about like any skin issues, just reading body language sometimes would be a little better in person. And then, yeah, if you have a practice where you want to do any procedures, you want to do injections, you want to do a VAG max test in office, like things like that, yeah, having a brick and mortar location is certainly useful. So it just depends. I think it depends on what you want to get. But for me, and like just the ease, and especially so if you're a practitioner and you're just starting off with a business, I think you have such low overhead. It's very low
Mm-hmm.
risk. So for somebody who's a little, you want to be a little more careful when you're starting off, it's not a bad idea either.
Mm-hmm. How do you get the word out? How do you let the public know about yourself?
Yeah. So when I first started, it was like pretty much all social media. And what I should have done, and I did later on, was just put up a local Google business listing. Because when people are looking for something, they go, functional medicine by me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like such low hanging fruit to be able to get some people in the door. But yeah, otherwise it was a lot of social, networking with friends, doing talks, a lot of podcasts like this as well initially, which is good just to get in front of people who fit your avatar. So yeah, it's I would say it takes some time to build all that up, and then at this point, after you work with people with enough years, then it's a lot of referrals.
Definitely. Yeah, referrals are absolutely the best. When you're really passionate about what you do, it sounds like you're really into your work. Generating referrals can start to come easy. You do a good job, you're really passionate, people get excited about working with you.
It's huge. Yeah. It's sometimes I feel like it can be a challenge because you have to get the right fit. So sometimes the referrals aren't always going to be like up to
Mhm.
speed with how you operate. But in general, yeah, a referral is fantastic. I mean, it's a good testament to like how good you are if you're getting people coming in and referring people to you.
Do you have like a standard? You mentioned a standard sort of like follow up schedule. Are you running like a very specific kind of standard program that where then you can personalize the care within, or is every program unique?
It's mostly pretty standard as far as like we're going to meet weekly with most people. There will be exceptions to that for sure. And I have other offers as well, but the main one is going to
Mm-hmm.
be weekly just because I find the accountability of me weekly, I get way better results. I've had people where we meet, bi-monthly, monthly, and it's just not the same. I just don't
Mm-hmm.
get the same results with it. So that's relatively standard. As the length of program is going to vary depending on how complicated the case is and what I think the person needs. And then same thing
Mm-hmm.
with labs. Like that's going to be personalized based on where they're at and what their condition is.
That's a really cool way of doing it. Well, what are the advantages and disadvantages? You mentioned one already, which is the accountability piece, right? Meeting every week. That's a huge advantage. Other advantages and disadvantages you want to share about developing a program like this?
Yeah. Well, advantages for sure. Again, results are going to be better for sure. I think it's going to build you as a clinician just because you can really start to get a good understanding of what it takes for somebody to do well and
Well, you get to
get
know
to know.
that person so well.
Yes, that's fun. That's nice to really understand because then you can really understand. Okay, what are the things that are holding this person back? I'll have so many people where I'll give them, at the end of the visit, we'll give them some homework. And I'm like, all right, is this doable? Yes. And then we get on a call. I didn't get to do this thing. I didn't track my food intake. And so we spend time going like, all right, what exactly happened? Like, when you thought about tracking your food, where was the resistance? What was going on? And then they'll start to tell you like the real reason of what's holding them back. Yeah, like it was busy and then I was on my phone and I got distracted and my wife felt so we can make targeted changes to their life based on that. And that's really where long lasting change is going to happen is when you start making this more of a lifestyle. But if I don't have that time, I'm not able to sit down and ask those questions and really like peel back the onion and say, okay, this is really the issue. There's always this superficial issue, and I can talk to you as much as you want about like, listen, you need to track your food, you need to do this, but if there are things getting in the way, we need to identify and correct for it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the advantage. Disadvantage, I mean, it's certainly you can only see so many people, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a challenge. So it's going to have to be a higher price point if you're doing that type of service. So it's going to be a premium offer. I mean, that's really the largest one. But I like it though. I like less. I like to go deep. So either you can go very broad, or you can go very deep. I prefer the go deep. The other thing you would have to end up doing at a certain point if you get super busy is you start bringing on other providers, and then the good thing obviously is you can scale. The negative there is like you're not going to be able to control as much. Like if you have a specific way that you like to do things, which most people who have a practice are pretty type A, then yeah, you have to be pretty trusting and bringing in the right people that you feel like are going to do a good job.
You totally do. I'm like really proud of you for doing this. I have such fear around doing this. I don't know if it's like the commitment of the person.
What aspect of it?
Having a person commit to coming every single week. It sounds like the best thing in the whole world for optimizing someone's wellness. But my goodness, it sounds like it's a big commitment for the person. And I'm so just in awe that you're able to do this because you're probably able to provide such a high level of care. But I was super nervous about putting myself out there like that, just for fear of people saying, no way, man, we can't chat every week. That's bonkers.
It's not, it depends on the person, but I mean, I'll ask people at the very outset of my screening, I'll be like, like how much time do you think you need? How much attention? And regardless of what somebody says, like, it's just the way you frame it. Like if I tell people, listen, this is the number one pushback I'll get is people are like, I don't need hand holding. So I always have to address at the outset, like, hey, this is not hand holding. Like, I want to make sure you get your results. So we're gonna hop on a quick call every week. It doesn't have to be long. It's 30 minutes, but I want to make sure that we are hitting our target every week. And no matter what, like I have so many people who are like, oh, I'll do what you give me the thing to do and I'll do it. It's even like the most driven person, it almost never gets done to the degree. So yeah, it's again, I've done it other ways, and it's just every time I do it, this just gets better results.
I fully get it. After having one of these podcasts with someone who has life coaching experience, who's also in healthcare, I was inspired to settle into this advice I got about getting an executive coach because I'm opening a couple clinics and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to be doing a great job for my associates. And we meet every 2 weeks, and I keep saying, like, I think we need to meet every week. Like, I really think we need to meet more because it's so valuable to have someone to say, okay, this is the one thing. It's making a huge difference. What is that next thing? What am I missing? Can we talk through this? It makes a big difference to be able to meet every week. 7 days seems like a real sweet spot.
That is the coaching is I think that's the underappreciated thing of what we do as clinicians. Like really, there is a huge coaching aspect, and it's challenging. Like that is a skill set that's not taught in school. Really, it's just like, hey, I'm gonna talk at you. This is what you need to do. And like most people are not going to follow through with that. So to really get change, it requires coaching. It requires time to be able to sit down and unpack all the things getting in their way. And yeah, like you said, if you only see someone every 4 to 6 weeks, it's not much time.
Where did you get your skills? How do you know how to coach? How do you know how to keep someone accountable? Do you have a framework or a strategy or a step-by-step that a clinician who is so used to this pattern of just diagnose, prescribe, they're trying to get out of that? What kind of framework could they use?
So my learning has been through work with coaches as well. Like I've had a men's coach, a mindset coach, and through working with them, I was able to understand what it takes. But really, like the secret is being extremely curious and just asking questions. Like, why is that? Why was that a challenge? What was going on there? And like the more questions you ask, the more people are going to tell you what's really going on. I think that's medicine in general. I mean, that's not even just helping people change, but just understanding what's going on physiologically. But yeah, really being as curious as you can and not being afraid to ask those like, uncomfortable questions. That's huge.
Oh, I totally respect that answer for sure. I was thinking the same thing with my coach. He asks the best questions. Like it's just like one question and then I talk for an hour. But so it's the same thing. Like sometimes it's a challenge to ask the right questions, and you really need experience to do that. But the only way to get started is to try.
That's it.
Just to get out there and start asking.
Follow your intuition. I think the medical mindset is. It took me so long to shed this. I don't know how it is for you, but for mainstream medicine, it's like, oh, we have a protocol for everything. So there's this checklist that you're always going through. I don't do a lot of that. It's really just like what is this? What's really holding this person up? So there's often not like a checklist of things. I'm just going to follow this thread until I figure out what's actually going on. You're really curious and really care about someone, but you'll get it. And I'm sure you get this with your coach. Like great coaching is not about telling you what to do. It's like helping you come to your own answers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, be curious. That's a really really great answer. And then they'll find that path towards, personal accountability on their own. I love that. What about if you were just graduating? So, this conversation we're having right now, I wish we had this conversation 10 years ago when I graduated, because I think it would make a big difference for me. What about for you? What would you tell yourself if you were just graduating, how to be the best possible clinician you could be?
Yeah, mentorship. That'd be number one. It's like
Mentorship.
find like the best people that you can and learn
Mm-hmm.
from them. Even if it's free, you're doing free work for them, you're paying them. I mean, that was always I was fortunate I learned this early on. Like I realized if I want to be as good as I can be, I need to learn from the best because you can do as much reading and research as you want, but if you work with people who are at the top of their game, they're going to accelerate your learning and your progress
Mm-hmm.
tenfold. Like what I learned in like 2 years with a mentor probably shaved off 10 years worth of me trying to piece things together on my own.
Absolutely. You think it's through, yeah, I know you've had experiences through associateships and also through paid mentorship. How do you make that decision initially? Did you enter a practice and get lucky to have someone who thought you was a really great mentor? Like, how did it start?
No. um, so what the practice I was in when I first started functional medicine, like it wasn't, we weren't getting the results that I expected. So I was a
Mm-hmm.
little disillusioned and I was like, I came in here and I was really expecting like to just like blow the socks off my patients and it wasn't happening like that. So that was when I started looking around. I was like, all right, who's getting better results? I actually hired somebody and the doctor I was working for, like I ended up paying for it. Not even her, and he was helping both of us. Like it was really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I was just so desperate. Like I would wake up in the morning at times, be like, oh, it'd be so cool just to have all the answers to be
Yeah.
able to just like this person comes in with this case, and you're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. It's obviously not that straightforward, but that was always like what was driving me. Like who's has a lot of like the answers that I'm seeking.
Right.
It's challenging. It's I don't know if there's any like framework for how you decide who that is. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it always comes down to like results. Who do I, when I look around, who is getting the best clinical results, not who's the best marketed, because there's a big difference between somebody who's popular on social media versus somebody who actually is like a great clinician. And those
Mm-hmm.
things get conflated a lot. But yeah, who's doing really well, and, who can teach me all those things. And it could be
Definitely.
shadowing, it could be pay mentorship. There's plenty of ways of doing it, but that's when you're young, that's it. Like be hungry, learn from whoever, travel, whatever you can do to get in front of the best people, just do that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. One group of patients that I'm seeing a lot, I think every naturopath in my region really is, but sort of in Vancouver, is a 40-year-old parent. And I'm looking for mentorship for this age group. I am one of these people with three kids trying to be healthy, and then people are coming to me asking for suggestions. How do we help these people? That 40-year-old parent living in an expensive city where they have to work all the time, but also they want to do their best for their kids and they want to live a long time. Do you have any strategies that I could use to help them?
It's a challenge. I get it. I got three girls under six, so
Nice.
I'm in the
Nice.
thick of it as well. I first and foremost, it's always the hardest is like getting good sleep. I think
Mhm.
that's one of the highest leverage things you can do. Number two for me is I try and get my stuff done as like early in the day. So I will wake up before my kids if it has to be 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whenever. I'll wake up and get a workout in, meditate, sit in the sauna. I'm gonna get those things done before they're up because as soon as they're up, like
It's
they're
on.
they're yeah, they're not gonna let you do what you want to do. And I'll include them. Like if I want to go for a quick workout, we'll go into the basement and I'll bring my girls with me and they like it. So that's also good, like try and include them into the activities you do. I think people get caught up trying to think that has to be like a perfect workout every time. I'm like, dude, if I got 10 minutes, I
Yeah.
got like this X3 bar where I'm doing some resistance training. I'll bring my kids down with me and I'll just like knock it out. So like don't let perfect get in the way of good enough.
Hmm. That's a great tip. That 10-minute workout is key.
Yeah, it's like if that's all you get, then do that. Like, and You can always go for a walk with your kids. That's like low hanging fruit. There's plenty of ways to get in activity. You just have to be a little bit mindful about it.
That's a good prioritization strategy, though. Maximizing sleep for those new moms out there. They got a big frown on right now, like we don't know what we're talking about. I totally hear you. It's so tough.
I get it. It's
so
Believe me,
tough.
my wife is always sleep deprived, so I give her so much credit. And at the end of the day, she's like, I'm wrung out, but I also want my time for myself. So that's the challenge too. Is like she wants to unwind. I'm different. Like I can sleep wherever. So I'm like, if I'm tired, I'm going right to bed. I'm not on mine. I'm just going to bed. But I get you. Some people like need that time, and then it cuts into the time you can sleep, and baby's keeping you out because you're nursing them. So there's not a good answer for that for mothers. I can use energy in life, Grace.
Completely, you really do. And we have these two priorities: the sleep and the physical activity. And I think in this chat, we're kind of speaking from experience where our partners, ourselves, we probably have the nutrition dialed in. And so it's probably just a given that we have that dialed, but many people don't. So if we have these kind of like 3 pillars, my wife chews walking hills. Like that's her thing. That's what keeps her healthy, right? Walking the stroller up hills as much as possible, 10K a day. With the stroller, that's her thing, but she doesn't sleep at all, like 7 years of zero sleep, right? Whereas me, if I have the choice, I'm often trying to catch up on sleep because without it, I can't function. Somehow she can.
Same.
We have the nutrition dialed. For those people who don't have the nutrition dialed in, where do you put that in the order of things?
I always take this for granted because it is like it's so ingrained at this point with me.
Yeah.
So what I do with my clients is I'll always try identify like what's the one meal that's your biggest challenge.
Yes.
Is it breakfast, lunch? Most of the time it's usually breakfast or dinner, and dinner is usually because hey, after I eat, I want like a snack or whatever, or when I get home I don't have time. So identifying where the trouble issues are. And you really have to just plan. You have to plan in advance and see like, hey, let's make a menu for the week and do food shopping. And if like even that's hard, then okay, like do we do like a meal service? Do I go and get some like healthier pre-made options? Like there's some pretty good options out there. So I'd rather do that than like obviously eat out. So you want to do the best you can. Obviously like preparing your food at home is ideal. But again, I don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. So like if the option is between you going out to eat and doing fast food versus you buying a pre-made meal at Costco, like a Kevin's where it's like pretty good ingredients and
bag salad.
Yeah, I'd rather you just like then do that. That's fine if that's all you got. And then like have things on the side, like have things that you can just pull out and use. I think people usually get caught with like, hey, I didn't plan. Like my day was crap because I have 3 kids, which happens a lot. But if you have some things that are just like ready to go, that can be huge too.
Oh, this has been like a masterclass, John. I love it. Picking that one meal, that challenging meal, and just trying to prioritize that. That's a super smart advice. I've gotten so much from our chat today. I feel like every time I get this opportunity to speak with experts in their fields, I'm like, it's like therapy for me. So thank you so much for your time. It's just the best. Where can people find you? If people want to work with you, like I would, where can they find you online? What's your social handles? Where should we connect with you?
Yep. Website's johnmitchellpa.com. It's John without an H. And most of my social handles are the same, John Mitchell PA or John Mitchell PAC. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which they call X now, which is weird. LinkedIn, all those, yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been so nice to chat with you, John. I learned a lot. I'm grateful you spent some time on our show, and thanks for joining Personalized.
Yeah, this was fun. We'll have to do it again.
We'll talk again soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Dizer and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.